Right. Good afternoon, everybody. It's an afternoon planning meeting, which is a slight change from the usual, but I'm sure we'll still navigate the business as we need to. Yeah, Paul, if you'll sit there, that's great. Thank you very much to all the members for attending. It's nice to see a good turnout, and obviously officers are here to deal with the business at hand. So we'll start with notes I've got to read out. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be could I first of all remind people to put their phones on silent?
Yes, sir.
I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live on the internet and will be available for repeated viewing for 12 months. If you are seated in this room, you are deemed to be consenting to being filmed, and any contributions to the meeting will be recorded and broadcast. So could we first of all please start with apologies?
Yeah, good afternoon, Chairman. I've received apologies from Councillor Lawson, Councillor Oates and Councillor Hudson.
Thank you very much. Item number 2 is declarations of interest in accordance with Standing Order number 16. Has anyone got any interests regarding the one planning application we've got this afternoon? No? Okay, thank you very much for that. And item number 3 is minutes of the meeting which was held on the 4th of August 2022. Is everyone happy with the minutes?
Move them, Chairman.
Moved by Councillor Smith and seconded by Councillor Sutherland. Thank you so much. Can we have a vote on it? Okay, thank you. And we'll move swiftly on to item number 4. And this is the annual report on the safety of grounds from the 1st of April 2021 until the 31st of March 2022. I don't know who's taking this.
Chairman, can I declare an pecuniary interest? I'm a member of Stafford County Council show.
Thank you. We'll put this down in the minutes, and I've obviously recorded anyway.
I'll start, Chair, if that's okay. Thank you.
Introduce yourself as well.
I will do. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting us to this meeting. My name's Trish Caldwell. I'm County Commissioner for Regulatory Services and Community Safety at the County Council, bringing this report today. I'm going to hand over now to Mark Wilson, who is our lead operational person for Safety of Sports Grounds and is our Technical and Business Manager in Trading Standards. So Mark will take us through the report and the detail, then we'll take questions at the end, if that's okay, Chair.
Thank you, Trish, for the kind introduction. Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Mark Wilson. I'm the Technical and Business Manager in Trading Standards, lead responsibility for safety of sports grounds across the County Council. I propose to briefly introduce the report to you and explain the pertinent points. I'll try not to take too much of your time today because I know you've got a busy agenda. I trust that you've previously got a copy of the report and you've had an opportunity to review that. Okay, so the report is prepared annually and informs the Committee of the Safety of Sports Grounds work completed during the last financial year. It describes the County Council's statutory obligations and outlines activity that has taken place to ensure that these duties have been met. It also advises the committee of the future workload that will ensure that the County Council continues to meet its statutory obligations in the year coming. The report also covers activity whilst we were still working within the COVID-19 restrictions, as you'll be aware. The legislation was amended to allow socially distanced spectators back into sports grounds, and venues started to operate events with spectators in attendance again from May 2021. So just by way of background, in Section 2, the report explains that Staffordshire County Council is responsible for administering the Safety of Sports Grounds Act 1975 and the Fire Safety and Safety of Sports Grounds Act 1987 in respect of all sports grounds across the county. This duty relates primarily to designated grounds, those of which have a capacity of over 10,000 spectators and 5,000 for football. And these grounds require a safety certificate granted by the local authority. In Staffordshire, this relates solely to Burton Albion FC. But other sports grounds of interest are covered where there is a stand of a capacity of over 500 standing or seating spectators, known as a regulated stand. And these also require a safety certificate under the Act, granted again by the local authority. And Staffordshire County Council has 7 of these, and they're detailed in 2.4 of the report. The remainder of Section 2 details other County Council responsibilities. So we work on a risk-based approach, and Section 3 of the report details how the Council meets its statutory duty with regard to periodical inspections, and explains the criteria used to form an assessment of each site, while Sections 4, 5 and 6 detail the risk ratings applied to each ground and or stand. Moving swiftly into Section 6, this details the work with Burton Albion FC during 21-22 financial year, and that's seen a number of changes in key personnel at the club, which necessitated a higher level of involvement from officers within the Trading Standards Department. This completed activity at Burton Albion is listed in 6.1.5 in the report you've got, including issuing a revised safety certificate. Section 6.2 and 6.3 detail the activity carried out by officers for high-risk and medium-risk venues. The report also references the Ironman event at Section 7. Trading Standards, the Technical and Business Manager, which is myself, chaired the SAG for that event as a pan-Staffordshire event. And in June 2020, you will recall the event was cancelled, but it did take place the following year on the 18th of July 2021. The report also references at Section 8 the 2022 Commonwealth Games activity and work to plan and deliver for preparations in relation to the Cannock Chase mountain bike event. Again, I chaired the SAG, the Safety Advisory Group, for this event, and many other teams across the County Council also were involved in making the event a huge success. I draw members of the committee's attention to Section 9 of the report, which highlights the resources drawn from the Trading Standards team during this period. And I think we referenced this last time. We've had a transition stage where I have now taken over lead responsibility from Tony Shaw, who is the operations manager, but he continues to support me during this transition phase, which we've extended slightly, just to ensure greater resilience and capacity to discharge our statutory duties efficiently and effectively. Section 10 of the report covers the Safety of Sports Grounds Safety Authority audit, which took place in June and December 2021, recommendations of which I think are in Appendix 2, and they've now subsequently been completed, and we're ready for another audit this December. Section 10 also highlights that the scheme of delegation has been updated to allow officers to issue prohibition notices under the Fire Safety and Safety of Places of Sport Act when spectators at a ground are when the risk to spectators at a ground is so great that until steps have been taken to reduce it to a reasonable level, the admission of spectators can be restricted or prohibited in entirety. Section 11 highlights to members that during the 2021 financial year, there's been a challenging year for the team, particularly in relation to changes in sports grounds safety management, and the way in which those facilities are delivered, particularly during the coronavirus pandemic. In conclusion, whilst the formal inspection processes haven't all been completed this year at deregulated grounds, regulated stands, largely due to the COVID controls, the team has continued to engage effectively with safety management teams at those venues and partners to ensure that all events that did take place did go ahead and were done so in a safe manner. This has been achieved largely by virtual safety advisory groups, as well as providing individual advice and support within a fluid and challenging environment. Details of inspections during that financial year you'll find at Appendix 1, and future planned work for this current financial year you will find in Appendix 3. That concludes my short delivery of the paper. If if I can assist by answering any questions, I'm happy to take those between myself and Trish, but thank you for listening and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for that. David, you've got something to...
Chairman, just a quick point. The Hensford Hills Raceway, where does that fit into our... I went there at Bank Holiday weekend to take my grandsons there, and I've got to say the whole place was absolutely heaving. And I just wondered what the status and what the position was there.
Thank you. Yeah, Hensford Hills Raceway is one of the 7 facilities which operates under a general safety certificate. We are in regular contact, have positive engagement with the venue operators. We understand they operate, it's banger racing, isn't it? It's stock cars. They have a number of events across the season, a number of prestigious events as well. I think there's another one, the Civil War. They are an open, approachable organisation. If there are any concerns that you would wish to raise, I'd be happy to take them to the future SAG, and I think there will be one due in the next couple of months.
Chairman, my only comment really was how remarkably well it was run. There was a massive number of cars there because everybody had to get there by car, and they seem to have got the whole thing organised very well indeed. And I just want to be sure we were happy with it.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we are happy with those operations, yeah, and they are a very, very good operator to work with, so thank you.
Thank you. John Francis.
Just a quick one. Why is the county showground stand a high risk?
Just bear with me, Councillor. Yep, just turning to page 4 in relation to the risk assessments. The county showground has a regulated stand. It is used, I understand, once a year. It's high risk for the nature in relation to the numbers of spectators who may be on site at any one time, although we do recognise the infrequency of the events, and therefore it's higher risk because we have less day-to-day involvement with them, but when we do need to get into sort of engagement and consultation with them, it's quite focused. But the showground and the county show is it's a keynote event for the county council, and we therefore do work very closely with them.
Could I just make an observation? It's incredibly important that we make sure that these grounds and stands at the county show are safe. Historically, I think there've been a problem. Well, we know there's been problems around the country. Some really sort of terrible incidents happening at some of these events, and it's quite reassuring to know that there is the power to cut back the numbers of people attending if there's concern, and I applaud you for saying that, because that is important. Just for my sort of you mentioned the fact that we've had problems with COVID, which is everyone knows about, the pandemic, and we may or may not be over that quite. And the inspection regime has suffered because of that. Just a really simple but a really difficult question. Are you completely happy with the regime we've got at the moment and the way it's moving forwards?
Thank you, Chair. We've increased our resources to pick back up on inspections that we may have missed, and we are ensuring that those individuals are competent to deliver that work. I can give you the assurances that through the planned activity, all regulated stands and the designated ground will be brought up to the expected level by the end of this financial year. It was only last Saturday that my colleagues were out at one football ground and another football ground doing that work. So we are actively delivering that work.
brilliant. So in terms of this financial year, we're talking about April the 1st or 3rd?
Yes, up to April the 1st, and we'll endeavour to bring this report earlier in the financial year, rather than waiting until October, because it's slightly retrospective, isn't it?
Excellent, thank you. I'm sure the committee look forward to that. Johnny McMahon.
My question pertains to infrastructure and the fact that there's now new responsibilities within the SAG, and namely you mentioned counter-terrorism and pandemics in general, C19. You have to put those extra requirements onto buildings and infrastructure that could be pretty old and preceded that requirement. I know it would be a very big ask to ask somebody to actually, remove a building or change it in some way. Are you satisfied that the infrastructure that we have in these sites is adequate? Because everything else is easier to deal with. Are you satisfied that the infrastructure on these sites is adequate for the purpose of safety?
Subject to whether it's a designated ground or a regulated stand, it will have a structural inspection cycle. So there will be competent and experienced services or businesses brought in to do that work, working very closely with building control at the local authority, which is at district level, to ensure that the current standards are met. Appreciate your comment that some of these facilities may be ageing, but we've got the assurances that they are up to spec by way of load testing, whether that be the roofs or the barriers or the terraces. So yes, we are alive to that, and we do work with that remit.
And counter-terrorism?
Yes, counter-terrorism, what may be a forthcoming protect duty and other things, they are elements that will be required to be considered within the remit of the SAG moving forwards, and the venue operators will have to ensure that they have the adequate plans and contingencies in place.
Going back to Councillor Marn's question, do we inspect their safety certificates, the train they do for prevent, ensure it's accredited, etc.? Because any sporting ground is so easy to basically commit terrorist activity at. So are we happy that they're all up to date with that? It is ongoing training, and it's training that will meet the requirements.
Thank you, Councillor. I understand it's ongoing training, and we do now ensure that all operations manuals which underpin the General Safety Certificate have reference to and have plans and policies around counter-terrorism, as many other things as well. We are tending to focus on stewarding provision whilst conducting inspections, because that is seen as an area nationally as a challenge, and therefore in ensuring that they are trained, they are competent to perform that role and effectively ensure that the public are kept safe. I think it's called the ABC training for prevent, and CT issues is part of that wider training remit. So when we do those inspections, we do ask for proof of certification from those who are attending to provide stewarding or security services.
Yeah, thank you. I think we've exhausted the questions. No, we haven't. Richard.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a sudden thought in the report. So obviously a lot of this is from the Hillsborough disaster and so forth. But I notice on the recommendations, the last item is referring to the Safety Act 1975. I assume there was no updates to in Acts of Parliament that would beef up that particular act following Bradford, even with the fire and so forth. Are you able to answer that? I'm showing my ignorance, maybe.
No, thank you, Councillor. As you'll see, the Act is quite old, 1975, and then there's a subsequent 87 one. Whether it be through Home Office circulars or from amendments to that legislation, there are continual changes in direction and requirements, the majority of which is underpinned by what is termed as the Green Guide, and subsequent guidance from the SGSA, which basically outlines the sort of best and acceptable practice. So they marry quite nicely together. So yes, it's fully up to date and fully conversant with the current threats and issues.
Any other questions? No? Okay. Can I thank you both for an extensive and informative report? Thank you very much. And we'll move now on to item 5, which is applications for permission. We have only the one, but it's an important one, and that is Saredon Quarry, Saredon Road, Little Saredon, SCC 1-0070-FUL-ES, and this is for the working and winning of sand and gravel within a southern extension to the quarry, with restoration to agriculture and nature conservation by backfilling with inert waste or other inert material and the use of existing access, site offices, processing plant and silt lagoons. And I understand you're taking this, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This report relates to a planning application submitted by NRS Saredon Aggregates Limited, seeking permission to extract additional sand and gravel reserves by extending the existing quarry on land that is allocated in the Minerals Local Plan. The general location. Saredon Quarry is within the South Staffordshire district and is approximately 2.5 miles southwest of Cannock, adjacent to the M6 motorway north of Junction 11. The proposed extension amounts to 8 hectares to the south of the existing site, which is the blue area shown on the plan. Access to the quarry is via the Great Saredon Road, which links to Saredon Road and then onto the A4601, A460 roads. So the blue area obviously there, and the access position there onto the Great Saredon Road, which then connects onto Saredon Road there, and then...
Chair, could you say something? It's not Saredon, it's Sarden.
Sarden.
Sarden, yes, please. Yes, okay.
You say Sarden.
I will continue on the right basis, yes.
Can I just explain that the reason for this slight hilarity is that yesterday I said, is it Saredon or Sarden? And I was assured by officers it was definitely Saredon. Exactly. I will go with that.
So the nearest residential property to the extension area is situated approximately 110 metres to the south, which is known as Sarden Hall Farm. There. Right. The first aerial view indicates the layout of the existing quarry. The plant site is within the southern part of the quarry, indicated with the green star on the photograph there. And the silt lagoons are in the western part of the quarry, and the remaining reserves are in the eastern part of the quarry, in that corner there. A concrete plant operated by another business is operated in the northwestern part of the site. So there you go, on there. So this is an updated aerial view of the quarry, recently taken, as of September 2022, and shows the extent of the remaining reserves in the eastern part of the quarry. So you get a better idea from this photograph as to the extent of the remaining reserves, which the applicant says will be exhausted by the end of this year. And then this also shows the restored areas within the central part of the quarry. So you can see the green bits there with the lake in the middle. And if you could see the definition of this photograph better, then you would see that there's lots of white
dots around there, but that's lots of tree planting that's been carried out over the last year or so. And then zooming in on this same photograph, you can see there the land that forms the agricultural land that forms the extension area, or the proposed extension area, which is to the south of the processing plant. And then this is a photograph taken from the nearest public highway, which is known as New Lane, looking northwards towards the extension area, indicating the land rising to the north and to the east. So this slide summarises the key aspects of the proposal: to extract 3 million tonnes of sand and gravel, to continue operating with an output up to 500,000 tonnes per annum, for mineral to be extracted within 7 years, for the restoration, which involves backfilling the workings with construction, demolition and excavation waste, and then for restoration to be completed within 2 years of the cessation of mineral extraction. So the plan here shows...
Can I just ask a question? That doesn't compute. 500,000 tonnes a year is over 7 years, 3.5 million tonnes.
Well, that's to allow for the 3 million tonnes, 6 years. But
I think just to clarify, it does say up to 500,000
yes,
tonnes.
yes. So
Presumably there could be different densities, can't they?
So it's 500,000 tonnes. Anyway, we'll come on back onto that. But yes, so the working plan there is shown on this slide. The area to be worked within 3 extraction phases, starting in the eastern part of the extension and working progressively to the west. This is shown as Plan 2 on attached to the report. In the eastern part, there's a ramp to be formed into the extension area, so that access for vehicles and plant is provided between the working areas and the processing area. Prior to commencement of the mineral extraction, a low bund is to be constructed around the edges of the extension area, and this bund would then be planted with trees and shrubs. Mineral is proposed to be excavated at varying depths, with a maximum depth of excavation estimated to be 50 metres. In order to do some of the excavations, then parts of the quarry will need to be dewatered to allow the mineral to be worked dry. The proposed restoration concept is based mainly on restoring the land to agricultural use following the backfilling. So it will be necessary to backfill the quarry void with waste brought onto the site to restore original ground levels. This would be a continuation of the existing backfill operation, and it's estimated that about 2.9 million tonnes of waste would be required. It's also intended to provide net gains for biodiversity, with an area of mixed scrub formed within the eastern part of the extension, and for new hedgerow tree planting. No representations have been received in respect to the proposed southern extension. It's noted in the report that the applicant has discussed proposals for the southern extension with the local community representatives at the site's liaison committee. No objections have been received from any of the consultees. The most significant comments which have been received are from the County Council's Environmental Advice Team and the Environment Agency. So the list of key issues are there on this slide. As regards mineral planning policy and other material planning considerations, having regard to the mineral planning policies, the merits of the proposals are considered in terms of maintaining the provision of sand and gravel from a site allocated in the minerals local plan. If the quarry is to maintain its production, additional reserves are required in the short term due to the exhaustion of permitted reserves in the quarry. On the second point, as regards development considerations as identified in the Minerals Local Plan for the allocation. It's reasonable to conclude that the application satisfactorily addresses those considerations. The committee report considers proposals for increasing lorry limits associated with the importation of backfill materials, but these should be first determined under a separate application that has already been made in relation to the existing quarry. So the recommendation would be that whatever's allowed here should be consistent with what already goes in terms of control on the existing quarry. In addition, the report refers to restoration proposals, which are assessed as appropriate to the landscape and appropriate in terms of the site's location within the green belt. Other matters that are raised by consultees, there we consider the report also considers the issue relating to the protection of groundwater resources, which takes into account the advice from the Environment Agency and the recommendation, or their recommendation, for extending the current groundwater monitoring scheme. So the recommendation of the report is to permit the application. Sorry, I've missed a slide there. I missed a final point, which was about the fact that we also need a Section 106 agreement. The final section of the observations considers those matters that need to be addressed by undertakings within a Section 106 rather than by planning condition. So undertakings are proposed to continue arrangements for site liaison with the local community representatives, to continue the HGV routing arrangements, to require extended aftercare of those parts of the extension area to be restored for nature conservation use, to secure a restoration guarantee bond, and to continue to secure a contribution towards the maintenance of the public highway. So the recommendation is to permit, subject to the applicant first completing a Section 106 agreement to secure the terms that I've just mentioned, and to the imposition of conditions attached to the permission as outlined in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Matt, for an extensive report there. I have no local members wishing to speak, and I don't think Councillor Perry or Councillor Williams have put any representations in, but I presume they've been part of the consultation process. We've got one speaker who's the supporter, and that's Mr. Robert Williams. Would you like to come forwards? Could you press the red button to... No, I don't think it's the right one.
Okay.
It is the right one. Yeah, okay.
Right. Good afternoon, Chairman and Committee. I've sat here before many times, and first of all I want to say thank you to the former committee members who originally took a big act of faith in terms of giving permission to the original quarry. And during those debates, I can remember sitting here when there was probably 90 people sat behind me who were here to protest against that application. And not all of the councillors were with us either. So I'm really saying thank you for that, for giving us that act of faith. Now, during the course of the years, the quarry has grown and the company has grown, and it has become quite an asset in terms of the production of the material. Around about 50% of it goes locally to various concrete activities, and in real terms it also takes an awful lot of material from the motorways and all the changes that have taken place, and indeed it takes in material from construction activities that other committees have approved in terms of, you know, trying to new houses and new development. So in itself it produces an extremely important part of this whole area in terms of material being produced and materials being taken in. I've worked with the chairman of the liaison committee, and I've also attended many of the parish councils whenever they've asked us to deal with issues that have come up from time to time. And I feel comforted today that no matter which way this goes, that all of the things that we said we'd do before, we've been able to stand up here and say we've managed it. We've not always been perfect. There's been times when we've had to put our hands up and say various things have happened that shouldn't, and we've tried to put that right. So really, gentlemen, I'm just here to say thank you, and just to remind everybody that my hearing aid is not conducive to this microphone. And if you've got anything that you want to shout at me, then, you know, please do. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Right, I'll open the debate to members. David, do you want to start?
Chairman, just looking at the terms and the start and workings that are going to take place, bearing in mind that the existing quarry runs out of aggregate by the end of this year, if we approve this application today, will they be able to manage continuity of supply, or is there going to be a 12-month wait while we sort out the 106 agreement and all the other items? How quickly is this going to actually be able to come into operation?
Yes, I mean, there's the obviously if it goes according to the recommendation, there's a 106 to complete, but we would hope that there's already been some prior work done on that in anticipation that obviously the developer wants to get an early start on that, but also there would be important aspects to prior to commencement in terms of archaeological work, setting up the landscaping that we discussed. So those things will have to be taken into account, but bear in mind that the quarry, yes, it's sort of it's declining in its reserves, but also operates as a way, you know, in terms of the backfilling and the waste received. So there's still activity there to do on the site, but clearly the developer will be very keen to get going with all these things. Yeah.
Councillor Abrahams.
Mr. Chairman, just in terms of the restoration plan, I'm concerned regarding the amount of hedgerow which is being removed compared to the amount being put in. Are there any plans in place to replace the same like for like?
Yes, probably didn't explain this very well. I mean, obviously there's a hedgerow that you could see that divides the two parts of the well, one field and the other field. Yeah, get that. Yeah, so there's a like for like replacement there. But you'll also see, if I can borrow that, yes, there's the hedgerow existing there and a hedgerow here. And then, as I said, that there would be these bunds constructed, which would be retained as a feature of the landscape for the future. So effectively, that large field will have an additional landscape feature added to it as a result of the restoration that's proposed by this project.
Thank you, Chair. As a person who uses Great Sarden Road and Sarden Road almost daily because we got the horses in Shares Hill, can Mr Williams promise us that the road will be maintained clean, free of mud, etc.? Because they come out of the quarry, they turn right, then they then turn right again. So we turn left, then turn right, and the road is constantly covered in mud. I know there's a liaison committee that Mr Williams works on, but most days, most evenings, the road is covered in mud.
Mr Williams has finished his speaking now, but I'm
just
sure
takes the point on board, that's all I'm asking.
I'm sure Mr Williams will take back that the roads need constant sweeping, not just occasionally.
site manager. So I thought I'd bring him along today so that he could hear what other councillors have concerns on, because his main job is to produce sand and gravel and do all the other things. But as I keep reminding everybody, that the perimeter of the site is not just the site, it's all around. And I brought him along here today to hear you say about the clearing of the roads and the looking after it.
Can I suggest that Councillor Snape has a word in your ears about the roads? Because I'm sure if it's not done properly, he'll come back, because he's quite tenuous about these things. It is tenacious, not tenuous. Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Chair. Very comprehensive report, and it's rare that we see an application like this where there are no objections, no sort of commentary, and 41 letters sent out and no response. So that's excellent. But I have a bit of a question. Paragraph 59 covers the vehicle movements, and it's the final sentence. There is sufficient time, therefore, to resolve the applicant's separate proposal regarding limits on the lorry movements. Now, my esteemed friend, Councillor Snape, basically didn't live there, but he spends a lot of time there, and I know the area itself. And at the best of time, it can be bogged down with, when you get 2 or 3 lorries there, it slows the area down and the lanes. So for me, are we going to bring back, will we be coming back with the lorry movements if we agree all this today?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. The issue of the lorry movements is there's a condition that specifies what those lorry movements should be, and as we explain in the report, there's already an application that's been made to resolve a particular issue that's happened in relation to the operation of the existing quarry, in relation to the fact that when as part of the backfilling of the quarry, the nature of the backfilling operations can be that they have campaigns of movement from construction sites into the quarry. And on 1 or 2 occasions, perhaps not 1 or 2, but on occasions, more rarely than the common practice, is the fact that they've exceeded their current limits. So the applicant has, or the developers sought to resolve that with increased limits on the basis of allowing some flexibility to accommodate these campaign movements. That application hasn't been resolved, and we felt that it was appropriate to resolve the application on the extension before we actually made that decision on the how we resolve the limits. So what we're saying in the context of this report is that the limits will be consistent with how they are currently on the application, but if a decision is made later as to whether it goes to this committee or whether it's a matter that can be dealt with by delegation, that's something to be resolved. But certainly we're not suggesting that they have the increased lorry movements at this moment in time.
Are there any other? Yes. Glad you spoke up, John. It's completely out of character.
Just a point of interest on page 31, para 35. National Grid say provide guidance having identified that the application site is within a high-risk zone for National Grid electricity transmission PLC's apparatus. So that's the power lines basically, and I assume that the site will have a big sub somewhere to provide the electricity for the site. So what's going on there? It says provide guidance. What does that mean, Matt? And thanks for a comprehensive report. I think it's very good.
Yeah, the site has had to work around some significant power lines. So there's a. Is it on the plan? All right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The earlier plans.
Right. Yeah. No. Struggling to find something to show you where the power line. It's not on the map, is it? No, but the pylons. There's a big one there, and you can see that they've worked around one already in the middle of the site, and there's one tucked away in the corner there. So the operator has to sort of separate to the planning control, has it. No, what happens is that we will let National Grid know, as we do with all the gas companies and all the utilities where relevant, and National Grid will provide us with a letter sort of to explain where their assets are, and also they highlight for us to forward on to the developer, although they probably know already, all the various guidance notes and all the rest of it, which clearly they have to abide with, which, you know, that's health and safety legislation and all the rest of it. So, yeah. But, I mean, this particular proposal, other than the fact that, you know, the pylons cross where the lorries will be going, I mean, effectively, there's no extraction underneath any existing pylon, as there have been within the existing quarry, as you can see. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Right, having been chided by John, is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Okay, thank you. Could I have a proposal, please? Sorry?
Move it, Chairman.
Being proposed by David Smith, seconded by John Francis. And could we have a show of hands, please? Okay, thank you. So we're following the recommendation of the officers for permit on this application. As we move through the agenda, we're on to exclusion of the public, and I understand there's no items on that. So can I therefore thank members, officers, and thanks to Mr. Williams and his friend for giving the presentation. And we'll close the meeting at 14:48. Thank you very much.